Thanks very much for that, expertly done. Welcome, everybody. This is the fifth in the webinar series that the Global Entrepreneur Program within the Department of International Trade is doing during this COVID lockdown. We want to try and help and support companies to, well, do business in a different way and react to what's changed in the world at the moment and get the most out of the opportunities which have arisen as a result of what's happening, but also to manage, obviously, some of the downside impacts as well. So the ones I'm going to be talking about today is getting the introductions. We're all stuck at home, both the people we want to meet and us. So how can we start? How can we get the most for our companies in terms of business development or capital raising? Those are the two main things which I get asked about as a deal maker: capital raising and the business introductions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into two parts. Part one is the problems we're facing, just so you know that established businesses face the same problems that the startups do. It's just at a different time and level. And then part two, the solutions, some of the strategies, and also I want to share some of the tools that I've used. So it's not just the strategies. I don't want to make this just purely anecdotal about my experiences. I'm going to rely also, like I said, not just my own experiences from asset management. I originally was a barrister and then moved into asset management, and we spun out, well, I suppose you'd now call it financial technology, all around investment. I've been a deal maker now within DIT since 2005. It's been absolutely wonderful during that period. But of course, as you can imagine, I've also dealt with, over that period, my God, I must have dealt with hundreds, if not touching 1,000 companies, and helping open doors for them, as well as, of course, seeing my businesses grow and face the same problems the entrepreneurs do. And I want to share some of the ways I've got around that. Not least, share from my experiences. This is not a pitch for my books. I can assure you that I only get about £1 in royalties. But outsourcing success is probably the one where I'd research most how to bring in resources for networking and growth and so on. So I'm going to share my own business experiences as well as my academic research, I guess is what you'd call the books, but also the academic research from other places as well in this webinar. I want to give you not just what I know, but actually what, for instance, Harvard Business Review says, and we'll find a way of getting these articles to you guys as well. So I've taken and researched for this talk, and it's the first time I've done a talk on this subject as such. I've taken advice, and the best advice from leading authorities around the world. So I didn't want to just make it anecdotal and say, well, Richard Branson says this and Bill Gates says you should do this, but actually look at what the business schools are also saying in terms of this. So I'm going to lean upon some of the things that I've learned from Harvard on the best ways to use social media, 3 ways to make the most of your alumni. So when we talk about networking, there's obviously not just the technology side, but there's a whole load of other things, and also gender differences. One of the things that we've done in the Global Entrepreneur Program is to make sure that we're attuned to what the broader government policy is, which is where we want more female-founded businesses as well, and we know there's a market failure there. We know that we don't have as many as we should, and so I wanted to make sure that we bring those aspects into this talk as well. Okay, the reason for that picture is not just to show you all my holiday snaps, but it's about networking. So what are the key problems? Let's start off with that in part one, and then moving on to some of the tactics, some of the solutions from all those sources and resources that I've mentioned, and some of the tools that are available. So problem number one, we don't know where to look very often. When I deal with a lot of the startups, not just startups, well, let me get rid of the word startup. Let's just say scale-ups, okay? Because most of you will be scale-ups. And actually, you might not even be entrepreneurs. You might be on the other side. You might be venture capitalists, private equity, whatever it is. You might be professionals. Okay, one of the things that I found is people actually don't know where to look, let alone who to look for. So I'll get questions asked like, and I kid you not, I've met CFOs of major scale companies, companies with turnovers of a couple of 100 million, who will just give me a WhatsApp or a call and say, do you know anyone at? Now, overall, if you're having a coffee, that's fine. But out of the blue, you've got a million things to do. ask, and they know that I've got a big Rolodex. Do you know anyone at? Becomes a bit of a pain question. So how do we get rid of some of those issues? Occasionally, you've got people who are just frantically, some entrepreneur one morning wakes up and goes, right, I need to know, and they're firing out emails. You can tell, can you introduce me to this one? What about this one? What about this? And they're just sending things. Whether that's in my deal maker capacity or in my personal capacity through my networks, that's not going to be an efficient way to solve your problem of how to get those doors open. So we're going to have to look at a solution for that. Problem number two, they don't know what to ask for. I'll get, well, can we meet for a coffee? The kind of generic, well, yeah, and in the broader scheme of things, you might think, well, that's a reasonable thing to ask for. There's an old saying, if you want money, ask for advice, and if you want advice, ask for money. I think there's more efficient ways than just out of the blue asking, so can we meet for a coffee? To get to the end goal that we want, we need to be more efficient, more targeted, more specific, and mindful of the person we're speaking to. Them. There are people who've got ample time for. I mean, we're not even going to have coffees nowadays anyway, but ample time for can we jump on a call? But what I find is that the person asking you often isn't aware of the individual they're asking and the circumstances they're in to make it easier. And the ones that I've seen network the best and get the best results. Apply some of the solutions I'm going to talk to you about, and the ones who don't, and I've seen over obviously 15 years which ones businesses go like this upwards and which ones sort of go plateaued. So I'm going to talk through some of those solutions. Okay, and the things I want us to consider first of all, and again these problems, is the cold emails where forget the intermediary and the introduction, it goes straight to the individual. It might be me. On the whole, we know they don't work. So whilst they're the last resort, let's work out a solution which is more effective than just spray and pray. Stalking on social media isn't cool. I get a little bit disconcerted when somebody will say, oh yes, I saw that lovely picture of you with your son. And I'm thinking, where the hell did you get your hands on that one? It is a funnel. I want you to treat this like a business. The introduction aspect is a funnel of leads, and I'll show you how in the solution part to work that funnel out, and again, some of the tools to use for that. We do want to be talking to partners rather than associates. If we can, we want to get at the top and work our way down. I've noticed people trying to do this sort of start at the bottom and work their way up. There is statistic to show, however, and I know why people start at the bottom and work their way up. There are statistics to show that the people at the top are obviously far less likely to answer, but we want to start more ambitiously, and I'll tell you why. I've got some empirical data to suggest that works better. And specific. So I'm going to get into the specifics of how to zone in as opposed to the generic mistakes that people I see making, and therefore they're wasting a lot of their time and energy. They're not wasting mine or whoever it is they want to make the introduction, because we've got a delete button. Well, obviously, if it's a GP thing, I'll reply back and teach them how to do it properly. But if it isn't, often you'll get people not responding for a reason. Problem number three, well, we'll hear a lot of talk about these high-performing teams, this concept of high performance. It applies to getting introductions. It applies to networks. A research study was done a couple of decades ago about how Bell Labs creates star performers. Now, we all want in our businesses star performers. And what they found, one of the critical factors they found, if not the most critical factor in Bell Labs in terms of star performers, in terms of innovation, in terms of all the things which are still important to this day, they compared the star performers, and they had lots of metrics. It was an academic study, lots of metrics to measure who and which companies did the best against which ones, the star performers or the mediocre performers, and they compared against a control group. And they found that the star performers had not necessarily the resource to get to the right people, but the resourcefulness of networks. Believe it or not, even the ones in the white coats, the geeks like me, who sort of crouched over a computer all day, had the ability to access someone to help solve the problems. It was having the right strategies and tools. And that's why this is more important than just, I need to get hold of X, Y, Z. I don't think this is taken as seriously as it ought to be. And like I said, there's obviously, as you'd expect, research done to show that if you want to be a star performer, if you want to get a high-performing team, we need to build up their ability to be more resourceful at getting access. How do we do it? What are the solutions? I want to turn to the most important part of the webinar, having sort of set it up, is the solution strategies and some of the tools around that. Okay, so first one, and I find it shocking. I still have to tell people to do this, and I taught people one-to-one in the Global Entrepreneur Program how to do this, and it's worked immensely well for them and for me. Remove the introducer's frictions. You want something from me, just saying, do you know anybody at? Guess what? That's going to go into my email. We know how we all do emails. We triage them. If I can do it immediately in 5 seconds, it gets done. If it's going to take me reading and reading and reading, it's going to get pushed lower. And that's not just in relation to introductions. As you know, it's in relation to everything. So why should it be any different with introductions, or God forbid, on WhatsApp? And I can tell when people aren't taking my time seriously, or let alone what they're doing, and they're trying to move their workload to me. The venture capitalists will tell you that this doesn't work because they often get asked for introductions to people within there. The companies will tell you this when you don't remove friction. So what do I mean by that? And I apologize for bringing lots of text on the screen. It's the best way I thought of doing it. Let me just explain this. How much time and effort do you spend trying to acquire a client? Just think about that. Don't think about the introductions and the door opening. Just think about how much time and effort you and your business spend trying to acquire a client. And I bet it's a heck of a lot. How much thought do you put into it? Just think about that. How much time do you spend making that access, getting hold of that client bespoke, working out what their needs are, how your product provides them with a solution, all that research you do into it. If you didn't do any of that, you wouldn't even be here, okay? How much time do you spend doing the background research, their needs, their recent news items, to find links? You're offering news items on their professional lives, not on their personal ones, okay? Do you consider why your client gains value? Of course you do. You think to themselves, if they use my solution, they're going to get some value. Do you think they owe you a living? Of course you don't. And you don't think they should just buy your product because you've rocked up one day, right? You reduce frictions for your client in terms of buying your product. You think of every single way of reducing the friction from them finding out your product and buying it. That's how you think. You think of a funnel. You think of the touch points from your calls, outgoing calls, to your landing page, to everything else. Why the hell do people not treat introducers? Assume I'm an introducer with a large network. Why don't they treat us with the same respect they treat their clients? Okay. After all, I can introduce you to 10 clients. I'm a multiplier. I'm worth more than your client is because I can introduce you to 10 of them, but I don't get treated, just using myself as a generic, with the same respect. Hey, Alpesh, can you introduce me to the BBC royal family god? I haven't had the god one yet. That literally is the kind of request. If we can make you think with the same hat you do with clients, and I don't mean you as in the people on this webinar, but more broadly, the effectiveness I've seen with GP companies when we've done this has been a tenfold improvement, if I were to use a rough figure. A warm introduction, we know from a shared connection, so from an introduction, from an introducer, is 5 times more likely than cold calling. So it is well worth treating me like a client, okay? LinkedIn, that's the source of that data, 5 ways, and I'm not going to tell you, hey, just go on LinkedIn, guys. That's the source of the data there. They also found personal introductions have a 500% higher success rate than unsolicited approaches. So you've got 2 approaches, you've got 2 strategies, the unsolicited cold call, you've got me. The cold call to the client, people take loads and loads of effort over. It gets wasted because they could have gone through the introducer, used the same amount of effort and got 10 times as many clients. I have seen in the last 15 years where, and by the way, not every one of, I'm just going to use myself as an example. Not every introduction works. My God, when they do, seen companies go to the races, but those are the ones who've taken the same effort over the introducer as they do to the client. I'm not there to be your business development officer, which is why we need to have strategies which will work, okay? And the strategies that you'll need, and here are some rules. You find out who I know, maybe send me your spreadsheet of who you want to be introduced to and the research you've done to show that I might know them, and where I don't know them, at least I can scan through your spreadsheet and work out, oh, actually, I do know X, Y, Z. There, you draft the email. by which you want to be introduced. Can you believe such a basic thing is not done and my frictions are increased? The number of times somebody had said, can you introduce me to XYZ? And I saw that you know them through a conference you were at or whatever else. And I think, what now? The more moving parts I've got to do, the more time I've got to spend thinking, you know this, it's not me being precious, in your business as well. The more times you've got to touch a keyboard, the less likely you're to get something done. Okay, the more time you have to engage your brain, the less likely you're to get it done. Why do we not treat the door openers in the same way? So I want that email drafted for me. I want it ready. I want it simple. I want one sentence per paragraph. It's not just me. These are rules from various VCs in Silicon Valley, all the rest of it that I've seen, and VCs in the UK, private equity groups in the UK, as well as my colleagues and friends, and also what I do when I want introductions to people. I want that drafted by which you want to be introduced. You explain to me, the introducee, what you want as well. So Alpesh, dear Alpesh, can you introduce me to XYZ? The reason is we've got blah, blah, blah. And here's the email which you can top and tail, change as you see fit. If you could make the introduction with this. And it's got the key facts, and this is really important, okay? You explain to me why, between the lines, not overtly, why when I make that introduction, you'll be making me look good. Because that's what it's about. I mean, I'm rarely about to do it for, or at worst, you won't embarrass me. Okay, because it is about that as well. I mean, I had one from somebody this week who said, Alpesh, and I'd call him a friend and a colleague, and he said, Alpesh, do you know Rishi Khosla at Oak North, which is now a $1 billion company? And I said, yeah, he's a very good long-standing friend, on holidays together, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, I've got a small company. Could you introduce him to them? And I turned around and said, well, other than the lack of information, I said, do you really want to use that one introduction, because he's not going to be sent loads, for that? That leads me to this point. Be proportionate. This is one of the most annoying, irritating things I find. What I mean by this is this. If you want me to introduce you to, let's take the royal family. I'm not in a position to introduce anybody to the royal family, but I'm using this as an example. Well, you better be royalty then, hadn't you? Alpesh, can you introduce me to the British ambassador in Brazil? I'm often asked, or wherever else. That's fine as a request, by the way. Except, why? How? What? Where's the information? What am I supposed to do? Hello, Your Excellency. Meet John. Cheers. Thanks. Bye. Seriously, if that work doesn't get done at your end, why the hell should I do it? But not only that, it tells me a lot about the company I'm dealing with. And the next 3 requests from them are going to go into junk as well. Now, you might think, well, that's a bit bloody harsh. You've got to bend over backwards to help me. Nope. Don't owe anybody a living. All right? Welcome to the world of entrepreneurship. Do you know what he does? Do you know why he should be interested in meeting you? And have you considered that by not explaining any of these issues, you're going to embarrass me, not just me, whoever it is, your introducee, be a liability on their time, and just proving your business development skills are lacking, so your business is likely to fail as well. It doesn't look good, doesn't look right. Okay, so let's look at a different way of doing this. Let's find the right contact and get to the specifics first. Let's remove some of the problems of do you know anybody at and just send out random messages. What are the tools available? What are the resources? What are the skills? Tools, resources, skills. Tools, resources, skills. Let's look at some of them. This is a pretty useful, as good as any, whether it's investor research or finding clients. You'll all have this, I'm sure. But why it's not used for the introduction part, God knows. You should, and I'm sure you do, have the data to know who it is at the VC firm or at British Telecom or at Virgin or whatever, what their name is, and what are they looking for. Just saying, oh, we've got a solution might be relevant. Have you got any research to show? You know, even if you share your spreadsheet with me, at least I'll know, okay, this isn't just somebody trying to take advantage. They've actually done research. I want to help this person because look at how much they've helped themselves. What's the value add for them, which is vital work? Now, I know this is a pain in the ass. I hate doing work as well. I'm as lazy as any other entrepreneur. But actually, if we want the introductions, which could give a 5 to 10-fold increase, then these things from the back end are going to not just help your business, but are going to help the introducee make that happen. When I've seen the best of the best do things like this, I've actually sat down with them. I have signed off the letters they've had printed in the good old days. We not just did emails, but we actually followed them up with letters because we felt people read those. I've actually sat down and taken the effort because I thought, wow, this is somebody who really deserves my help. Okay, tracking, scheduling, all the breakdown. Now that might be a bit difficult to see. You can make these available later. The whole everything from the research to the investor intros to the schedules and the timelines and when that's going to happen and the meetings, and that then I know this isn't just somebody spraying and praying, just hoping something comes up, but actually they've got a targeted strategy that they're implementing, why they're doing it. Now that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's just you've got to. I had somebody, a friend of mine who's a CFO at a major UK bank, and he said, look, I need a relationship with a Danish bank, and he's a friend, and he just said, do you know anybody out of Denmark? And sometimes, obviously, we do have normal human relations, but when you don't know the introducee that well, things like this, at least at your end, will help convince them that they should be helping you in any event. To know that you've made the effort, you've worked it out, this is part of a bigger strategy than just the simplification. So how are we going to get this information? How are we going to find out where all of this is? For instance, it might be that you want to be introduced to an accelerator, an incubator, a big corporate. Where are we going to find that information? I've put some of those things that I'm asked the most, which is accelerators, incubators, venture capitalists, every single one in the UK, what they invest in, who their partners are. Okay, so you can do that research first, not, Alpesh, do you know somebody who might be in every single grant-making authority, what their specifics are, which regions they cover, how much they lend, which sectors? Because I shouldn't be doing that for you. Nobody should be doing that for you other than you. If that information is publicly available, which it is, and I'll tell you the tools where I've made that all available so it's searchable by you, then wait a minute, you ask me, Alpesh, do you know any authorities which might give us a grant? That instantly tells me, yeah, mate, delete. Obviously not if you're GP, I'll explain to you what you should be doing, but if you're not, and your introducees won't be. So the first part is the research. Now I put that together because those are the things I'm asked the most. Accelerators, incubators, venture capitalists, grant-making authorities, loan-providing authorities, and going through that, lending amounts or equity amounts, what they need, what sectors they're looking at, if they're offering at the moment at all in any event. So it'll save you a lot of time, save me. So I'll tell you where those resources are in a second. Another tool I use, and I think it's useful, and it's trusted by Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Samsung, IBM, to find contact details. Okay, find contact details, including emails and phone numbers. Use those with care. To their Cognizant and Lusha or Lucia. I don't know if you've come across them. The Lucia, for instance, sits onto my LinkedIn. I want to try and get hold of somebody. As you all know, the higher up they are, the more difficult it is to get them just to do a reply on an in-mail, almost pointless messaging them, barely ever going to reply. But what Lucia does is it works out who they are, finds their direct email address through God knows how, because it knows every single one I've got. And it's actually even got my cell phone number, and I have no idea how it's got my cell. I'm not saying you're going to necessarily cell phone people, but what I'm saying is it's a very useful tool which is used by the big entities, which is why I use it. I don't use it because I want to stalk people and find their email addresses. I don't actually have the need to get many introductions just because of the nature of the business we're in. But what I do have the need for is an interest in, well, what are the big giants doing? Because I'd like to be like them one day and copy them. So there's online tools to get hold of and access these things for those where if you haven't got the direct introducee that you know well, and how do you get an introduction if you don't know anybody who can introduce you? Then one way to start is, okay, let's find people who might know the end person. Maybe you met, and this is where it comes in really useful, maybe you met someone at a conference. Maybe they were on a webinar with you, whatever else, and you want to be able to reach out to them because there was that connection. that proximity, but don't necessarily have the deal. Maybe they're a speaker, you couldn't grab hold of their business card. This is where this comes in very handy. Dear so-and-so, bit of flattery works. Met you, saw you speak at XYZ, and there, it's perfectly legitimate. Get their email off Lucia, make that connection. Loved what you said. I wanted to tell you about this. Guess what people love? And I'll tell you the biggest breakthrough I ever had in networking in a second using this strategy. Guess what people love? They love that you listen to them and that you liked what they had to say. Now, I know it sounds crass and you shouldn't fake sincerity, but that at a conference, the follow-ups that happen, not only have worked for me, but others, then going on to Lucia, then getting hold of them. If I didn't get their business card, and we all know, we've been at events where somebody mobbed, you're not going to be able to get hold of cards. They've been dishing them out like toffee. But they'll have, hopefully, on here, a separate email address. Might be a personal one, doesn't matter. It's how I got hold of Dominic Cummings, actually, and his private personal email address, which was great. What I did, my biggest ever breakthrough in networking happened about 20 odd years ago when I needed to meet, and I was a complete nobody, still am, but back 20 years ago as a real nobody, needed to meet 10 of the world's leading hedge fund managers. I wanted to set up a hedge fund, and therefore I wanted to meet 10 of the world's leading hedge fund managers. How the hell do you meet 10 of the world's leading hedge fund managers? And so what I did is, and I'm not saying you can use this approach, but the principle behind it is what Lucia is about and what these other systems are about, is I approached the Financial Times and said, I've got interviews with 10 of the world's leading traders. And I went to the 10 of the world's leading traders and said, if you agree to meet me, the Financial Times will publish the interviews. Now, I'm not saying you're going to replicate that strategy. I used it 20 years ago. It won't work again. My point is, because I was able to get them a hook, which was of value to them, everybody wanted to be in a Financial Times book, even if you're a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, I was able to meet them. That hook of, well, what's in it for me? Why, great, Alpesh, I heard you speak. Here's a product, boom. Here's a product, make your life easier. No, I want it more direct. What Lucia allows you to do, or these other products allow you to do, is contact that individual with a thought, just 5 seconds, of why they're benefiting. That has been an instrumental tool. Now, hopefully, when you look at some of these tools, or Cognizant, or whatever, there's a whole load of them. Okay, when you look at them, it'll get your juices running for what's specifically relevant for your business, what's specifically relevant for you. There's another strategy. Now, this is going to sound way too over-optimistic to you. Your ambitious scale-ups. I don't think your ambitions should be lower when it comes to getting introductions than they are in terms of your business goals. Every single one of you on this webinar who are entrepreneurs will at some point or other have decided you want to be a unicorn. Okay? If you haven't, and you just want to be a lifestyle business, you've got onto the wrong webinar, right? You'll have decided you want. So you've got these immense high ambitions with an incredibly low probability of success. That's what it is. And probability of becoming a unicorn is relatively low. Those are my ambitions for my business. I don't care that the probability is low. It's what makes me an entrepreneur. My point is, why are those same ambitions not there when it comes to the people you need to get in front of? The life-changing thing, in my case, was using that clever strategy with the Financial Times in the book, and happened 20 years ago, which, guess what happened? It saved me a lifetime's worth of work, because I got the trading strategies to help, and the advice and the mentoring to set up the hedge funds, and fantastic, got to where I needed to get to a hell of a lot quicker than trying to work up the bottom way up. I'm not saying you don't do the bottom up. I'm saying top down work. So how are we going to do that? What's another strategy which I've seen work well for others and successful people and for myself? Forget myself. I've seen and observed work well, and from the academic literature that I've pulled in, it's supported by this. It's the pull strategy. It's not just you pushing yourself and your services at others. How do you pull to get the big boys to contact you? Media display of expertise sounds easy enough, doesn't it? Of course we know it's very difficult. I happen to, and there's lots of opportunities thanks to the internet, of pitching column ideas. Now people think, I haven't got time to do all of that. Speaking, we're in the webinar world at the moment, but put webinars to one side, and there's more opportunities to speak at webinars as well. LinkedIn posts, if nothing else, and tagging the people you want to meet. If you can't write, use Fiverr. They've got some phenomenal journalists who will write the stuff for you for a couple £100. They're amazing, who are ex-Telegraph writers and so on and so forth. And then either pitch a column, an idea, whatever. A Business Insider, for instance, was looking for experts. That gets those people knowing not only you're an authority, but reaching out to you. Now you might think, yes, I heard that before, Alpesh. So last year, London Stock Exchange got in touch with me because I had a strategy that I wanted to make sure they knew what I was doing in the algorithm business, and they were tagged now and again on Twitter and on LinkedIn. They got in touch. They flew me out to Italy to meet some of their biggest banks, and then had me speak at their events, which was then used in my business to speak to my audience of what it is we do. It works. The public media display is worth taking the time and effort. Now you might say, well, that's all very well for you to say, TV presenter, blah, de, blah, de, blah. No. It is because business required it of me. What will you not do for your business? Business required it of me. Columns work better than any other way. Media works better than any other way of getting the pull factor of the biggest people, the CEOs. I'm talking in my industry, the CEO of Goldman Sachs Asset Management, Jim O'Neill. Okay, the CEO of American Express, the CEO of all sorts of big business. Why? Because for some perverse reason, if you're in the media, you're on a stage, and try and get the keynote, not just be a panelist. Okay, if you're on a stage, the way social norms work is you must be somebody worth speaking to. You must be more knowledgeable than everyone else. Standard Chartered, God bless them, the chief executive got in touch with me last year, not because I've got some special skills or anything else, because they saw the media stuff, the authoritativeness of the things we're talking about, and it works. And guess what? That one thing, the amount of time I spent on that and the cost was negligible compared to only relying on the traditional methods of PR agencies and business development people. If you don't have this in your quiver of arrows that you're going to throw and target, then what you're missing out is this. Business development, 99% of it is just the norm. You know, each year we'll get a 5% increase or 10% increase in sales, yeah? We're all on this webinar in a different area. We're in the area where, screw that, we want to start at the top and we want giant, massive leaps forward as well. So we're going to have two strategies. We've got to have the, you might call it long shots, which is what mine was when I reached out to the leading traders in the world. The long shots, strategically well thought out, because if one of those hits, and they will if you keep persisting at them, you will have a tenfold increase in where you're trying to get to and what you're trying to achieve. Okay? Some more tools. So I've mentioned to you in terms of tools, the data research, every single VC, every single grant making authority, every single lending authority, who the contact is, what their names are, who the partners are at each of those entities, who the decision makers are, what their emails are, what they're investing in, what sectors, what size, all of that information I've collated from various government sources. I've put it on that website, tech2great.com. It's completely free. It's principally because I kept getting asked the same things over and over again on GP stuff. And there's only two main pages: great resource for entrepreneurs, great resource for funding. And all that information, that research, everything I talked about, solving those problems, getting to the solutions is on there, plus some of the academic stuff. Now, in this, obviously, there's a limit to how much I can get into in terms of details. It also has links to some of the best advice from some of the best VCs for getting introductions and getting those warm introductions to people. But if I was to summarize it, do the hard work for me. Get that email right that you want me to introduce you by. Give me, if you can, oh, by the way, this is critically important. Don't just say, do you know Jim Smith at Barclays Bank? I mean, for God's sake, after this webinar, don't say, do you know anybody at Barclays Bank, because it's going to get deleted. Do you know, don't even say, do you know Jim Smith? Remember those tools I showed you? Give me their address, email address. Give me their email address. Alpesh, this is Jim Smith. He's at Barclays. I wonder if coming from you, and this is the email that you've drafted, where I can just hopefully cut, paste, forward. Dear Jim, great company, XYZ. That removes my frictions. It makes sure it gets done. I've got one question here. Well, actually, that was the end of the presentation. And shall I do the Q&A? Shall I read out the question? Do you want to read them out? How do you want to do it?
Hi, thank you, Alpesh, for delivering this very informative presentation. And what we'll be able to do is I can read out the questions that have come in through the panel team. So one that we've had just come in, Alpesh, is basically around having in the UK. Apologies. So the question is, to grow my small network in the UK, should I join relevant LinkedIn groups and mailing lists? And will activity like this actually help me to grow the network within the UK?
Yeah, it's a really good question in terms of, okay, let's take it the other extreme, which is, so you've got no networks in the UK at all. How do you get into the right stuff? And I'll give you an example of one fantastic GP company, Advotech, came over from India. They're in medical technologies. They're basically like sort of Uber meets ambulances. And you can imagine at the moment, they're a godsend. He went from being part of the program to, before I knew it, within, I think it was 12 months, the guy was host, and he's not wealthy or well-connected or anything like that, no networks, to hosting events in Parliament by members of Parliament and sponsored by newspapers, which, of course, all of which also sidelined, promoted his business. To the extent he was mentioned in the House of Commons by his local MP. What the guy did is he reached out to his local MP, said what he's doing, and there's a good idea, by the way. Every single MP in this country wants to know what their local businesses are doing. And my God, talk about door openers right there, because guess what? It makes them look good when you're contacting them and saying, look, love what's happening. And by the way, try and avoid whinge fests. I'm not saying that MPs don't want to hear about issues you might be having. Of course they do. It's what they're there for. But we all love good news stories as well. We all love the optimism part, what's working and what's going well. That's the way he did it. And so how did he do it? Well, I'm not sure about LinkedIn groups. I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm a member of some of them. Do people actually read them? Do people high enough up the level really read them? The one thing that I've seen work better than LinkedIn groups is when you do a post or an article, preferably on LinkedIn, because guess what? That's what London Stock Exchange looked at for me. I know they did. Okay, they looked through the articles, the expertise, and those articles stay forever, and LinkedIn has a lot of credibility, is you're also name checking them. And I don't just mean dump a load of names. I mean try and be a bit more specific, because everybody loves to be complimented and associated with a name check or a mention in an article. That pops up somewhere, and then take them there. So one way, if you're just going to use the LinkedIn aspect, is that. But more importantly, secondly to that is what I've said, is reaching out to one or two people with the good news aspects, whoever those people might be. So it's not even an ask. You're not coming in straight away. You're just trying to build a network. You're not coming in and saying, oh, but can you introduce me to XYZ? Let's just get on with it. Or to your MP or to whoever else it might be, whether it's in government or elsewhere. It is just to say, just wanted to write to you to let you know this works really well, or this was fantastic for our business. And it's the unexpected. It's not what somebody, and it's not salesy, and it's not an email that's being spammed to them. It might be even a handwritten note, which nobody does anymore. We do handwritten letters, by the way. And the reason is it actually works well for us. Somebody said the volume's very low. It might be at your computer end rather than mine. Hopefully that helps in terms of that. I think LinkedIn groups, mailing groups, a bit lower down. But the other way to do it is ask advice to people. Say, look, what are good associations for me other than the research you can do yourself? For me, for instance, I deal a lot with entrepreneurs out of India, because I cover the Indian market. And whilst this isn't just for them, the advice I'd give them is join TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs, or go to their events. The Indus TIE.org. It was founded originally in Silicon Valley by the founders of Sun Microsystems and Hotmail. I co-founded the UK chapter 20 odd years ago. And some of the people that we've had speak globally at our various events, everybody from Bill Gates to presidents of of the biggest companies. So you name it, we've had them speak there. As a networking entity, there are organizations like that. The next step then is to find out, okay, who's in charge of picking speakers, maybe for a panel, and then eventually for the keynote. And I will, in the early days, I would have done, and find out, who's in charge of that bit, and make contact with them. So it's not always the top up, but oftentimes it's the bottom up as well, and getting onto some of those panels. That will expand your network, because when you're speaking, and this is a funny rule of, again, social norms, when you're on stage, you're perceived as more important, and the people are coming to you and giving you cards. Now, I know that a lot of those contacts, they won't be relevant, but it is a very good way. Some of the biggest and best deals I've ever had, and it's been by chance, have come from fellow panel member. All of a sudden, I'm on the same stage as them. So the fact that he's the CEO of Barclays Bank, who incidentally launched one of my books 3 years ago, it didn't matter that he's the CEO of Barclays Bank and I'm, a shrimp. We're on the same stage. All of a sudden, we were on the same level. It's just how things work, okay? That was what? So stage. The other thing, this will be less relevant initially, but if you do find yourself in TV studios, the green room. It's like the green room is the bit you go on before you go on. It's the same principle as being on stage. Go to the speaker's lounge before you're due to speak. Meet all the speakers. All of a sudden, you're on the same level as them for whatever reason. Have a chit chat. Works incredibly well to get those introductions. They have been the most lucrative sources of business deals for me than virtually any other thing ever. Sorry, I've given too long an answer. The next one.
Thank you, Alpesh. Another question that we've had come in was around upskilling the capability of team members. How do you ensure that the team behind you make the best of the opportunities that your long shot gets? Multiple times, this founder has had long shot hits, but the team was not up to the task of being able to follow through. What advice would you give this founder?
When it's the long shots and they're big, you've got to be in charge. I mean, I for good or bad, I've seen friends go from zero to becoming billionaires. I don't just mean there's Rishi, Peter Cruddas, there's Hilton Nathan. There's a whole bunch of my friends, and I'm not saying the old joke. I can't remember who said it. It was somebody very witty who said, "When my friends succeed, a little bit of me dies." That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is observing how they've done it. They're the ones at the lunch. It is not fobbed off to secretaries and to staff. It is them who are following up with the big shots and making sure everything, they're on top of that process. It's too important. If the person you're supposed to meet is big enough, important enough, that's got to be you. For those who are options traders, it's an out of the money option. It's a lottery ticket. It's a 1 in 100 chance. But I've seen it pay off too often, not just in my life, but in others, to ignore. And it is you who shows up, because nothing pisses off somebody bigger up the stream than, great, my secretary will be in touch to fix up a time and he'll organize when we'll meet, whatever else. No, it's got to be you. It's got to be you who's in charge of that. It's too important. Sorry, next question.
Thank you, Alpesh. Another question that's actually been emailed into us ahead of the webinar, so I know you may have covered in it, but it's still worth us going through it. One of the founders has asked about the usefulness of actually recording webinars and using a webinar as a tool to get out in there in front of potential clients. What advice and tips would you give around recording a webinar highlighting your company?
So I never believed in web. I didn't even know. 10 years ago, a friend of mine at Barclays said to me, you should have financial software and you should use webinars. And I said, who the hell's going to buy for webinar? Are you mental? Don't be daft. And this is B2C, by the way. So might not apply B2B, but B2C. And lo and behold, it's the most important revenue line in our business. Let me tell you something. We make more money selling software via webinars than we do on the hedge fund side. Because remember, on the hedge fund side, we only get a proportion of the fees of the profits that we're making for our end clients. Okay, and you've got office costs, you've got very expensive staff salaries, you've got all of this coming out, and then the proprietor gets the money. You know, I'm at the bottom of the list. Everybody else is at the top of the list. Okay, make more money selling software, which is one reason why I think Jeff Bezos left D.E. Shaw, who's a hedge fund manager, and set up a small tech company selling stuff on the internet called Amazon. The webinar side of our business on software makes more money. It's shocking how that works. So yes, use the webinar. I'm talking B2C. B2B, I'd have to think about that. But B2C, what we found is live webinars work better than recording. However, when you do the little recordings, what we do, like most people do when it comes to content creation, let's talk content, let's talk business development, let's talk opening doors on the push side, showing our expertise. Those are recorded, they appear on LinkedIn, they're on YouTube, they are snippeted on various social media, Medium, Quora. Quora is great in terms of not necessarily the biggest CEOs, but Quora, Quora, where people post questions, you can answer them and you see who's got the biggest followers. They're some of the best ways. If you really want to know, when it comes to marketing, I mean, we're expanding a bit from introductions, but it is a subset of marketing. Probably one of the best people. The marketers that I like are actually not the Harvard Business Review types, and I should have put up the name of one of them. I'm going to tell you his name now. Is not those types. It's actually not the academics, and it's not London business schools and all the rest of it. They're fine, but one thing that I've discovered is these business schools have become so academic, and I was at LBS giving a talk a couple of months ago. They've become so academic and removed from actually the real world. And what happens is I like the hustlers. The person who's made me the most money was a guy who left school at 16 with no qualifications, and he's probably my closest friend. The guy's a hustler. He was working at Barclays, left all of that, 16, no qualifications, because the hustlers get shit done. So sort of in a roundabout way to answer this, probably the smartest hustler when it comes to opening these doors. And if you ever want to know, well, what should I do in terms of expanding networks, selling my products, marketing, what I often do is I'll Google Neil Patel and then the question, Neil Patel, how to use Facebook. Neil Patel, he's not relative. Neil Patel and how to XYZ. Because on a marketing bit, he's a hustler. He gets stuff done. And he's actually used by some of the biggest corporates in my industry, would you believe? Where you'd think, well, hedge funds don't use hustlers. Oh, yes, we do. To get stuff. So yes, about the videos, but exactly how to use them. Look at him, see what he says in terms of getting those introductions to the right people. He deals again more with the B2C, but yeah, getting that, repurposing that content, getting it out there, showing that expertise, and on that LinkedIn article that you're going to do, or the post where that video is going to appear, make sure you found the experts and written why. You know, I got, by the way, just one more thing on this. So I used that technique, and I got to the head of, I think it was investments or search for new talent, whatever, but basically the relevant person at the Qatar Investment Authority. Now, I had other routes to get to them. I wasn't actually necessarily looking to meet him, finding me through the LinkedIn route and saying, wow, that's impressive, because they've been tagged on one of them and I mentioned them. But you've got to have a follow-up as well. There's no point having an introduction and not having anything to do with it, but it does work. So yes, I'm sorry, a long-winded way of saying webinars are completely underutilized on the B2C from what I can tell. And for us, it was a total game changer to a level I cannot tell you. And there's an underworld of people using webinars to sell software B2C, okay? And there are a bunch of people who aren't and don't get it. And one of the best examples I've seen of this recently was a investment software company. And until the guy did a webinar, after the guy did a webinar, I got a load of emails from people saying, hey, I'm going to keep that software. This is great. This is great. I can't believe how well it works. I'm still not sure why it works so well, but it's to do with human engagement and the ability to see somebody's face on the authenticity of it all. So yeah.
Thank you, Alpesh. Okay, we've actually come to the end of the questions that we had posed to us for this particular webinar. So thank you again for delivering a very informative session. And I hope the founders on the line have found this useful and will be able to take away some of Alpesh's key learning points. Just to let you remind you guys that, again, this was the 5th in the series of the GEP webinar program, which has been developed to ensure that companies are aware of the different support that's available to them during this current health crisis, and also techniques that are available to help you get out there and identify new clients. We'll be following on with the theme of this session on our next 2 webinars. Next week, Wednesday, the 13th of May, we'll be delivering a further session around creating new business opportunities. This will be delivered by our GEP dealmaker, Jude Oar, and the following day we'll also be looking more at communicating to clients at this time, and this will be delivered by the Rochester PR group, and we will be emailing this information out. So once again, thank you very much for dialing in today, and if you have any further questions about the GEP program, please email us at global.entrepreneurs@trade.gov.uk. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.